The sound of footsteps coming up the stairs brought me back to reality. Some time had passed, and by now the lunch break must already have begun for those outside of my hiding place. I pushed out all of the languid air from my lungs and sat back down. A part of me very much wanted to check the entrance, and I had to force myself not to look. How many stairs did the staircase have again? I wondered. Just then, Adachi? My ears twitched. I pulled back my head and cautiously looked up to the speaker. It was Shimamura. Trying my best not to let my astonishment show, I replied to her, all the while feeling both happy and guilty that she had come here just like I had hoped. What? Wanna come to the cafeteria with me? We never go there. Shimamura was acting like her usual self. The events of yesterday didn't seem to have affected her in any way. She had still come here though, which I chose to interpret as her at least thinking about it on some level. Sure, I don't mind. I grabbed my bag and pushed myself up. After dusting off my skirt, I turned to face her. There she was, the usual Shimamura. Not wearing casual clothes, her hair not tied. She waited for me to fix up my uniform after we exited the gym. While walking, I realized that I hadn't said good morning. It was pretty common though. We rarely greeted each other in any way when we met. Even our parting words were pretty half-assed most of the time. And I thought you had finally started to come to class like a good student, Shimamura suddenly stated as we walked down the stairs. The tone of her voice sounded completely different to how it was usually. Are you imitating someone? Yeah, our teacher. How was I supposed to know where you were? She shrugged her shoulders. The teacher had asked Shimamura where I was. In other words, she thought that we were friends. Close enough for her to ask Shimamura first. Hmm. You really found it that funny? I thought it was a pretty bad imitation. She looked at me puzzled, her eyes wide. Hmm? What do you mean? I asked back, confused by what exactly she had meant. That, Shimamura stated, pointing at my face. Did I really look that amused? I rubbed my cheeks. Yeah, I had gotten pretty excited back there. Even disregarding the reason why, this alone was enough to make me blush fiercely. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Easier said than done. Shimamura seemed to be under the impression that the act of laughing itself was the source of my embarrassment. She really was clueless, huh? Not that I was complaining, of course. The situation would have been way worse had she known. Still rubbing my cheeks, I walked behind Shimamura as we headed towards the cafeteria, the entrance of which was located outside of the school building. To be perfectly honest, this was the first time I'd ever used the cafeteria. It had always seemed to me like a hangout place for second and third year students, one that a first year student, such as myself, wasn't exactly welcoming. And more importantly, I wasn't orderly enough to get lunch daily. In the past, I had done some observing while passing by to make sure that I wouldn't panic and get all flustered when it came time for me to order. And from what I could gather, the cafeteria looked to be based on meal tickets. Next to the entrance, there was a machine, and before it, a line of people which we joined. There was also another queue next to us, and as I peeked at its source, I saw a canteen. Was this where Shimamura always came to buy things? Hard to say. I had never gone. Besides the canteen, there was also a vending machine that sold not only mineral water, but yellow soda as well, though, according to the red warning light, the latter wasn't available at the moment. We didn't say anything to each other while in the queue. It was as if we were holding our breath, overpowered by the noisiness of the other students around us. I did feel like I should say something, anything, but nothing came to mind. I also felt like our eyes were going to meet eventually if I kept staring at her slender neck, and I had no choice but to look away. It was bright outside, and the window sparkled with the sun's light. There were some clouds too, dark in the middle and bright around the edges, and through the rifts between them peeked the bright blue sky. Behind me, I heard lively chatter piercing through my body and smelled the faint scent of food. The scenery was pretty dull, honestly, but staring at it was the best and only way of killing time I had while we waited. After what felt like an eternity, it finally came our turn to buy meal tickets. Shimamura, having prepared the exact sum of coins beforehand, went ahead and picked the daily special, the Chinese rice bowl. Hadn't you also eaten Chinese food yesterday? I wondered, as I chose the same one. We walked inside, exchanged our tickets for food at the counter in the middle, and filled our cups with water from the supply next to it. All that we needed to do now was to look for seats. That turned out to be easier said than done. None of the long blue tables were empty. After walking round for a bit, we eventually found a table with 3 corner seats. We sat down facing each other, and I took a sip of my water. It was lukewarm, and left a faintly rustic taste on my tongue. It tasted like tap water. I far preferred mineral water over this crap. I put the cup down and picked up the chopsticks. As I did, I could feel a pair of eyes staring at me from the opposite side of the table. Shimamura giggled as I lifted my head to look at her. What? I asked. My hand stopped in the midair. I was just thinking about how cute you were yesterday. Cute. Out of all the words in the world, that one made me blush the hardest. When you added on her innocent grin, exposing her rarely seen teeth, it became utterly impossible for me to look her in the eyes. You were cute too, Shimamura, I retorted, though it barely counted as one. Really? I was dressed like normal, though. Yeah, that's what I meant. You were always cute. Shimamura didn't seem to have interpreted it that way, however, and simply laughed off my remark as a joke of sorts. For some unknown reason, she considered me to be the prettier one out of us two. I don't think anyone would disagree with me if I said that there was a grand misunderstanding. Shimamura was way cuter compared to me, of course, as saying that to her face would have made the mood all weird. I decided to let the topic slide. I sat there silently, staring at my food and moving the chopsticks. Maybe you should come eat there again. No, please don't, I stated, waving my hand sideways. I was dead serious. If Shimamura's family started visiting the restaurant regularly, I would have to find a new job. I was just joking. I'm not really a fan of going with my family either. Figured. It's kind of embarrassing to have your folks looking, huh? You bet it is. Now let's eat. Shimamura pressed her palms together, and I did the same. I rarely did this before eating these days. I mostly ate by myself, and I had kind of just forgotten. We then began eating, and the conversation once again paused. Though Shimamura had spent the entirety of her meal at the restaurant engaging in friendly chat with her family. It didn't seem like a similar atmosphere was going to be born between us. There really was something special about family, huh? I did want our relationship to become special too, one day. Like best friends. Or lovers. No, not lovers. Maybe. No, definitely not. Eating restlessly. Like licking the chopsticks. Thoughts like that filled my head. I couldn't stop wondering, what would it be like dating Shimamura? At our age, even if you went out with some boy, it didn't mean that you were gonna get married or build a family together or anything. As such, it wasn't really necessary to stick to the opposite gender, as long as we limited our discussion to this specific period of a person's life. There weren't any particular issues when it came to two girls dating each other. No issues, huh? What was I thinking? There definitely were. Even if I could understand it myself, the rest of the world would never stop giving us weird looks. Whether or not Shimamura would be willing to accept it was a massive issue in and of itself. At the same time, all those were issues with the real world, with Shimamura, external ones. Perhaps what I had meant was that I personally didn't have any issues with it. No, that wasn't it either. Focusing on it, I could definitely come up with at least one. There was a possibility that I could bring that value system with me to adulthood. And if that happened, it would interfere with continuing the legacy of my family. While it was true that I was merely a single person, and it didn't really matter what I did, the appearance of an exception could potentially attract others and end up creating a massive wave. Now, whether or not that would happen, I didn't know. But if yes, society would be in a lot of trouble. It was for this reason that being the exception was so scary. I see. Did I really like Shimamura that much? Hiding my face behind the bowl, I sneaked a glance at her. Her dyed brown hair waved in the air, matching her movements. Her makeup was a bit more elaborate than mine, and her eyes made her seem languid. There was also her mouth, moving elegantly. My stare was fixed at Shimamura's face, especially her mouth. I hadn't really noticed it before, but she sure was cute. It was common for things to start looking like something completely different once you became conscious about them. Feeling that I was going to be enthralled by her, and knowing that I shouldn't, I turned my head away. I pretended like she didn't even exist. Just then, a thought crossed my mind. Why Shimamura?